Network, and our critical conversation today is about the requirement, the necessity for Black economic empowerment through exporting, selling around the globe. Why is that essential? Why is that critical as we move into the next phase of our business development as the Black business community? I'm so excited to have a conversation with Eric Henderson. Eric likes to call himself an OG, and I must admit, he is an OG. He has done this a lot longer than I have. He has a tremendous amount of success. He's successfully doing business in the Middle East. And we really wanted to bring someone on that could really tell you about just how lucrative this market is, the deals and projects that he's done. And the other thing I love about Eric, he talks numbers. He's a very straight shooter. He talks numbers. So, Eric, welcome to the Black and Global Business Network.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. And now, Eric, tell us about yourself and a little bit about your background and your history.
Sure. Well, despite not having much hair and having a lot of gray in the hair that I do have, I'm only 21 years old. I wish. I'm in my early 50s. I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, to two valedictorians, one of the class of 67 at Morehouse and one of the class of 68 at Spelman, who were among the first crop of Black executives at IBM, beginning in the summer of 1968. And I was raised in St. Louis until I was about 12, where we moved to my mother's hometown of Dallas. And then I finished the rest of my formative years there. The reason I bring that up is my family was prominent everywhere they went. Within the Black community, my mother and father were both volunteers with OIC, the Opportunities Industrial Corporation, which was created by the late Reverend Leon Sullivan, and IFESH, which was his commitment to seeing Black and brown, especially Black, people get into business and have the Sullivan principles of honorable and integrity-based ways of doing business. And they had centers where corporate executives like my parents could go volunteer, teach, and share with the Black community, particularly in inner cities. They were involved in Jack and Jill. They were involved in 100 Black Men. They were involved in Delta Sigma Theta, which are, as you know, are all service organizations. And so they had a commitment to giving and giving back. And so I was raised with that expectation.
Okay. All right.
On my mother's side, they were administrators and educators. On my father's side, they were educators and lawyers. And so they were committed to not just the civil rights struggle, but Black advancement and empowerment. And so when I moved to Dallas, I began to enjoy the benefit of the relationships my parents enjoyed within the Black community, but they put me in the wealthiest white neighborhoods and in the wealthiest and top schools that one could find. So on one hand, we knew Black billionaires like Comer Cottrell and Mr. Lewis, who was the first Black concessionaire at DFW Airport. We knew beneficiaries of Maynard Jackson and the work he did to create Black wealth around the construction of Hartsfield Airport at the time. And then I went to school with the Zales kids, like Zales Diamonds. I went to school with the Neiman Marcus kids. I went to school with Tom Hicks, the Billionaires kids, the Perot's kids, the Hunt Trucking, Hunt Oil, Kansas City Chiefs, Dallas Cowboys, Hicks family. I went to school with Jerry Jones' grandkids. And so
a lot of money. A lot of money.
A lot of money, but more importantly, a lot of know-how. You begin to see how, not just how people inherit money, but how they make it, grow it, and maintain it.
Okay.
And so it just so happened that one of my grandmother's dear friends, who was one of the founders of the Congressional Black Caucus, introduced me to a guy named Bill, who was an overweight fellow from Arkansas that had presidential aspirations. So I was helpful to him in Dallas, and when he won, he asked me to come to DC. So as an undergraduate, I had studied international business, political science, and international affairs. And so
Mm-hmm.
I came prepared, understanding what NAFTA was and wasn't. And so I came to focus on Latin America and the Caribbean. And pretty quickly, my boss, Secretary Brown, told me he wanted me to focus on Africa and the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did as I was told.
Awesome. So that's a really amazing history. So how long were you at the Department of Commerce?
I was there just shy of, like a month shy of 10 years.
10 years. And which departments or divisions were you in?
I worked in the Office of the Secretary, and I oversaw the International Trade Administration. Then I went to the Undersecretary for Trade's office, where I oversaw about 3,300 employees across the International Trade Administration, which had the U.S. Foreign Commercial Service,
Mm-hmm.
Trade Development, Market Access and Compliance, and Import Administration. And then I went to the Office of Africa. Then I went to the Advocacy Center, where I was regional director for
Okay.
Africa and Middle East. Then I went to the World Bank.
Okay. So just to establish that you definitely know what you're talking about. So Eric, take us to your business now that you currently were moving into the Middle Eastern market and give us an idea of what motivated you to move into the Middle Eastern market and what steps did you take to start
Sure,
doing business there?
sure. Well, first, before I answer that question or respond to that, the first thing I would say is for Black American business people, there are only 400 million Americans in the market. We can say it's a huge market, we can say it's the world's largest market, but there are only 400 million of us. 10% of whom are identified as Black.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 40 million. Black and brown people around the rest of the world total 3 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Many Black and brown people are in the Middle East. So it is illogical to me to spend 100% of your time marketing to 40 million people as opposed to 3.04 billion people. I'm a pragmatic businessman, so forgive me.
I like
So,
that. I like that math. We tell businesses only 95% of the market is outside of the US. I mean, if you have 100 customers, you're only going to focus on 5 and not focus on the other 95, that you should expand your thought process to include international markets. So we definitely agree.
sure. So, as it relates specifically to the Middle East, in a funny little human history story, there is a $700 million company out of New Jersey called Hill International. And in 1985, 86, Adil Femi, who is a commercial service specialist in the U.S. Commercial Service Office in Dubai,
Mm-hmm.
sent an email and made a phone call to Mike Manning, who was with the U.S. Export Assistance Center for North New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, hey, there's some real estate developer here in Dubai that says he wants to build an island that doesn't exist. Do you know any U.S. firms that might have an interest in participating in some way? And so Mike Manning called Irv Richter, the CEO, chairman, and founder of Hill, and said, hey, there's this crazy real estate developer that wants to do this island that doesn't exist. You should come over and meet him and see if this thing is worth your time. That developer was Nikhil. That project was Palm Island.
Wow.
So fast forward 15 years, when a friend of mine who was the head of minority business for the state of New Jersey understood that I had been appointed after having been a Clinton appointee by the Bush administration as the commercial attaché for the U.S. at the World Bank, he said, Eric, this Hill International company that's in 100 markets globally is all over the Middle East. You should talk to them. And
Mm-hmm.
so as I got to know how they approach the Middle East, and I having already been a person in the Africa, Near East, South Asia, which included the Middle East office at the Commerce Department, I understand that the office was called, but the Middle East geographically was not a frightening place. We think, oh, they speak Arabic, which
Mm-hmm.
most Middle Eastern countries, to include Oman and Bahrain, Saudi, Dubai, uh, uh, Kuwait, speak English.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Yes.
have English speaking brown and beige people. So who are not opposed to doing business with brown and black people from the United States because
Mm-hmm.
they see us as American. To
Mm-hmm.
them, you're either American, African, or Caribbean. And since
Yes.
Black Americans are neither African nor Caribbean, we're Black and we're American, they see us as Americans. Just like
Mm-hmm.
when you travel to Africa, Africans can tell a Black American for miles.
Yes.
It doesn't make
Yes.
sense to us, but it makes perfect sense to them. So
Yes.
I realized that firms that had, 2 million in revenue in 1986 were already 500, 600 million in revenue by 2002 because they had driven and gotten so much business in the Middle East. So I started telling US firms, particularly Black owned firms, follow successful business models.
Mm-hmm.
The first of which was work with the United States Commercial Service and with whatever state export agency that has people on the ground in the Middle East, which
Yes.
just about every firm and every state and every uh, federal agency at that point did.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what I learned in traveling to these markets and what I learned in talking to my colleagues at the time is they care more that you're American than that you're Black.
Okay.
Now, we in the United States have a race issue. We have a race issue. We have a color issue.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing I need to belabor because I'm not explaining anything new to any of your constituents.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, we get more preoccupied with that
Mm-hmm.
than the rest of the world does.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as a Black American firm, if you're pursuing U.S. federal government contracts, you have to beg and plead and whine and cajole to get scraps.
Right.
Whereas overseas, the United States government treats you like a U.S. company,
Yes.
knowing that if you get that contract, if you make that sale, you are going to create more jobs in the United States. And ultimately, that's their focus and mandate. It's one of the
Mm-hmm.
few times where U.S. government personnel and the United States government treats us fairly because they see benefit from us making more money, paying more taxes.
Yeah, that's what we stress to the businesses. You can go to different countries to sell globally, but you already pay your tax dollars. So you should utilize the personnel that's on the ground in these countries in order to go and open doors for you. So you talked about the Palm and the deal you did with the Palm. And so give us an idea of some other projects that you've done in the Middle East.
Sure, sure. So you asked about my firm. When I left the commercial service, I
Mm-hmm.
hired Adel Femi and commercial specialists in Africa, Middle East, South Asia, and the Caribbean. So I essentially stole some of my former staff and showed them how to make a lot more money because in government employ, you make the same every 2 weeks, whether you need to or not. If
Yes,
you close $1 million deal, you close $1 billion deal, you get paid
that's
the
right.
same every 2 weeks. But in
Yep,
the private sector, you benefit from what you kill.
right.
You eat what you kill, and if you kill a lot or you kill in large volumes or consistent volumes. So as it relates to other deals, I've helped um, Black-owned firms like Bluefield Associates, which manufactured Clear Essence, become XM Small Business of the Year in 2006 because we helped them set up distribution in many markets, Africa in particular, but Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Kuwait.
What are they distributing or marketing?
Skincare for Black and brown people. Uh, we helped Proline. We helped Johnson's. We helped in terms of Black-owned clients that we helped, but we helped many white-owned firms. Hussey Gay Bell was one of our early engineering clients out of Savannah, Georgia. So
Mm-hmm.
what we essentially did is take on clients and with a sales or contract closing attitude, help those clients sell their services, whether it was engineering or architecture, or whether it was products, organic Black women's hair care. Many of the products that are bought and sold in Africa are bought and sold through the Middle East
Oh.
because of the historic relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So and the ease of visas. So if I'm a Nigerian distributor, so it's easier to get to Dubai than it is the UK or the US.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now they know you can't go and stay for long. They know you can't afford to stay for long, but there is a business-friendly jurisdiction. And so we've had dozens of clients that have sold all kinds of products: solar powered generators,
Mhm.
prefab homes, light gauge steel structures to include hotels and hospitals, um, electric trucks, cybersecurity services, accounting, engineering, construction management, organic feminine napkins,
Mhm.
you name it, fast moving consumer goods, financial services to include investment banking and project finance work.
I love all of these different types of products and services. I love the variety that you're listing because oftentimes, especially services businesses, they will count themselves out and they'll say, oh, there's no market for services, there's no market for training and consulting and HR and all of those type of professional services. And many times, like one of our company is a relocation specialist and she really wants to get into the Middle East. And so listening to someone like you who has done this work for more than 30 years in this market is really key to hear you list the type of success that you have had. So let's turn to having Black owned businesses to move into the Middle Eastern market. Would it be something you would encourage?
Uh, yeah, I certainly would encourage it. I wouldn't oppose it. I tend, in my expansion strategy for my clients, to look at what is, depending on their experience, depending on
Mm-hmm.
their appetite and their level of patience. Everything's personal. Some people are willing to wait because there's huge money in the Middle East,
Mm-hmm.
but it might not move as quickly as Canada or the UK or
Mm-hmm.
Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So you might not find as many billion-dollar deals in Canada and Mexico, but you might move something this month, close something
Right.
this month.
Right.
So I encourage the Middle East, but I encourage people to enter with their eyes wide open in terms of the sales cycle and
Mm-hmm.
the length from initiation to completion, because it's far away. There's fierce competition, and there's the need for relationships. I try to encourage my clients to start off in places where they don't have to travel or don't have to travel far. But if they're
Mm-hmm.
willing to travel, the Middle East is, as a relatively speaking, easy place to travel to.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes even easier than Europe, though the flights are longer.
Mm-hmm. So tell us, Eric, about some of the cultural and business acumens that are necessary or that you've run into that might be different in the Middle East than other places in the world.
Well, actually, it's funny. As Black people, we tend to be relational.
Mm-hmm.
The people in the United States that we often deal with tend, in most cases, to be transactional.
Yes.
I would say Middle Easterners, generally speaking, and I hate to be generic and paint things with broad brushstrokes, but they tend to be much more like us. They
Mm-hmm.
want to know about us. They would rather find out that you're $1 million company, you're struggling trying to make it, but would be delighted to do business there with them in Jordan or Iraq or Kuwait or wherever it is, than
Mm-hmm.
overstate. They appreciate honesty. They appreciate directness. They appreciate patience. They're relational. And so I would say it's different than dealing with white Americans, but it's not different than dealing with other Black folks. We generally, as Black people, want to have some level of understanding who you are, who's your mama, who's your cousin, who do I
Right.
know, who do I know that you know that doesn't
Right.
like you, who do I know that you know or that knows me that doesn't like me, and vice versa, who likes maybe both of us. Um, I find Middle Easterners will try to, for lack of a better term, put their camel's nose under the tent and try
Mm-hmm.
to understand what you're all about, what you really
Mm-hmm.
have, what you don't. I will caution people against hyperbole. Generally speaking, if you're doing business in or with a Middle Eastern company or government, you will never be the biggest company or the most
Mm-hmm.
impressive person they've dealt with. So
Mm-hmm.
that's not the way to lead your sales pitch. You could be as large as Bob Johnson or others, and they know people just as large or much larger. So that's not really the selling point. The selling point is you will stand behind your product or service. You'll stand behind your contract. You'll get up early, stay up late to deliver
Hmm.
what the agreed upon deliverable is, and that moves them forward relationally.
Okay. So that's some really great advice to have. And the other business etiquette is like, for example, in Saudi, they're working on Sunday, which is really critical to understand. Fridays that they are not working, which is something else that's very critical to understand. When ever I go to the Middle East, and I've done business in the Middle East, the prayer time is always challenging for people who don't understand that for business, for work, everything comes to a halt. So, you really have to understand the culture as you move into the market so that you can better understand the type of relationship, the type of response time, and just what they're looking for. Because,
Sure.
one of the things I've found to be very helpful is being an English speaker. Like you said before, that most of them speak English. So, like, I've traveled there with, working for the government or working for the OECD in Paris, and, different types of delegation with trainings around tax or international tax or structuring when they were looking to tax foreign corporations, right? Not having a domestic tax, but taxing foreign corporations. And as we brought people from different parts of the world, that was such an adjustment, is to understand everyone spoke English, but to understand the difference in the actual customs and culture in the country was in general was quite it's one of the biggest lack of shifts that I've seen in any of
Mhm.
the parts of the world that I've been to.
Yeah, I think if you compare the Middle East to Europe,
Mm-hmm.
what you will what you will find is Europeans, they used to have siesta,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whether it was in France or Spain or wherever it may have been. Even in Germany, they would have a period of not an 1 hour lunch like we're accustomed to in the United States, but 3, 4, 5 hours, and they might resume at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon and want you to go with them until 8 p.m. I think that to accommodate American business, they don't really call it that as much anymore, or they don't
Mm-hmm.
act like they're adhering to it. But often you will not have Europeans working between 12 and 3. And you think,
Mm-hmm.
where the heck are they? I'm calling, I'm emailing. And I think the general life skill is not to know every custom, because you never will, of
Right.
any other person, any other country. We don't know every custom of every black person. You go to one black person's home, it's shoes off. One black person's
That's
home, they
right.
give you slippers or socks. Another
Right.
black person's home, they're not concerned with it. So you have to learn people as individuals, both who you're working with, their government culture, and to ask, hey, is there anything I need to know? There is no sin. People in my 154 countries of doing business, in the 88 countries I've visited, I've never had anybody get offended with me saying, I don't know your traditions or customs. Can you tell me what landmines not to step on? Can you tell me what not to say, what not to do, or what I should do in this situation? Or
Mm-hmm.
what do I need to know when I come to your house in Taiwan or Kazakhstan or whatever? And people will generally tell you it's always polite to wait for other people to eat.
Yes.
Even if you are, as a guest, are being served first, if you sit politely, hands folded, and look at your host, they'll say, no, please eat while it's hot. Then you notice to proceed. But you should be doing that at a business meeting, in new person's home, even in a friend's home.
Mm-hmm.
I would even, God rest her soul, I would even do it with my own mom. She, but boy, you better eat that food while it's hot. So common courtesies are in fact that they're common. It's I'm attenuated to what may offend you,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm attenuated to what may not. Even if you're hungry, take wise portions, because people may want you to eat a second plate, or may
Mm-hmm.
want you to eat something you don't normally eat or you don't care to eat. So take a small portion and make the best of it. Smile as broadly as you can, and be prepared to use whatever yogurt sauce if it's too hot or spicy for you. And remember that the worst thing you can do is drink water when something's too hot for you because it spreads across your mouth. Now, why is that? You don't want to offend anyone
Yes.
by eating something that was too hot for you and
Mm-hmm.
then not eating anything else and having a funny look on your face. So it's better to have a small portion to try something or to ask, do you think this will be too hot for me? Or what
Mm-hmm.
exactly is this so I can know this is a first for me?
Mm-hmm.
You never offend when you ask. But when you try to act like an American know-it-all, which is often what we are much, even as black folks, we are much more American than we'd like to believe.
Mm-hmm.
And we can rub people the wrong way, much
Yes.
like Americans, um, with our facial expressions, our attitude, our sighing,
Mm-hmm.
and eye rolling. I mean, those things are offensive and hurtful in business or in personal relationships, wherever you go.
Mm-hmm.
And so to your point, Dr. Muhammad, is it's not a matter of knowing all the customs, but
Right.
I will say this: if you're going to take an 11 or 12 hour plane ride, Google at minimum customs of Oman or customs in Jordan or
Right.
okay, so they work on Sundays. They may be accustomed to you receiving their phone calls when you're in the U.S. because it's it may be 5 o'clock in the morning to you, but it's 10 o'clock in the morning or 11 or 12 to them. And if you say, well, I can speak to you, I don't work on my holy day, which is Sunday, they
Mm-hmm.
may take exception. So you might say, you know, I've, you may, depending on your faith, you may say, I can work for an hour before I go to my worship service or my church or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. You might say, I won't be able to get back to you for 6 or 7 hours because I have time with my family.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably shouldn't get into, is the Quran real, the Bible real, is Allah God? I don't think that kind of conversation,
Mm-hmm.
helps or edifies anyone. But if they call you and you say, "Oh, it's 7 o'clock in the morning, I have to let you go by 7:15 because I have to get my kids ready for
Mm-hmm.
our worship," most people honor and respect that.
I agree. I agree. And I think that's great advice to ask because food is such a big part as you go to these countries, and going out to dinner is such a big part. And the different countries that you travel to, they want to share their customs. They want to share their culture. That's one of the things I actually love about this business is you actually get to meet so many different people from so many different cultures, and having the a respect for learning from other people is really great. And then the other thing, Eric, that we do is we have our businesses to work on their websites before they go into markets to make sure that their websites are not offensive, and their marketing materials, we make sure those are not offensive depending on the market, or that they're market appropriate. Let me say it like that, for
Sure.
wherever you're going. And we also do cultural training before
Mm.
we have them to go into the different markets. So Eric, another question, and I didn't ask you this at the beginning. What are the locations that your business has in the Middle East? What offices do you have?
So we're in Jordan, Saudi, in four cities in Saudi, uh, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Kuwait, Oman, and a little bit of Iraq. But we have a full time presence in many markets around the world, but we
Mm-hmm.
have ad hoc presence in 154 total markets. And so I have former colleagues from the World Bank that are in all the Middle Eastern countries. And so if and when we need them, we we reach out to them and say, hey, we need your help in this country, and they accommodate our request.
And then Eric, you help with putting together the financing for these projects and these deals that you have with your clients, right?
Correct, we do.
And then what are some of the sizes of the deals that you've done?
Oh gosh, we just completed a $5 billion financing for a project in Mozambique. We just finished a $750 million project in Saudi, and another $500 million project in Saudi, a $430 million project in Abu Dhabi. We have done several $1 billion worth of project financings in Dubai and Kuwait, and about $1 billion in Oman. I'm a partner in a firm, and we've won Deal of the Year and Firm of the Year in the Middle East 7 or 8 years in a row,
Wow.
according to Project Finance magazine.
So that is really amazing. So this is why I'm telling you, Eric, when I met you and we started to talk about the synergies of our businesses, it was so important to me that you come on to talk with our businesses, because you're an example for us of what Black-owned businesses are able to do in the Middle East. So I really think that you're a great example of that. And then let me ask you, what about regulatory requirements? Any like pitfalls and challenges that you think that businesses should be on the lookout for in the Middle East or that you've come across?
Yeah, I mean, it's in many ways doing business in the Middle East is like being a professional athlete. You have termination for cause clauses in contracts. You have moral obligations clauses where you won't do or say anything offensive to people's gods or cultures or governments.
Mm-hmm.
They expect you not to have defamatory, libelous, or slanderous writings or comments, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of keep it generic and keep it business. And so that's a big, those are big legal. On the regulatory side, similarly, I think that you run into, the situations where you have to have good legal counsel, both at your corporate level and local level. So hopefully your counsel will have built relationships with lawyers locally or law firms locally that will have an appreciation for what will fly or not locally, or
Mm-hmm.
prepare you to have to navigate litigation or disputes or avoid litigation and disputes. So I don't know that I can speak to specific things, but you can offend people based on violation of Sharia law. You can offend people based on what is appropriate to them culturally. I think that there's always a need for your own personal counsel, someone like you, and
Mm-hmm.
your ability to get advice from local counsel. Now, that doesn't mean, admittedly, I'm a hard nosed businessman, so I'm always going to try to get the best and what's most advantageous um, for my firm or my clients.
Mm-hmm.
And I let their lawyers protect them. I'm not in the business of protecting other people or their lawyers. And I know that sounds a little crass, but invariably, for example, um, I will often, and my lawyers will often say, let's find a court of mutual inconvenience.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're doing business in Saudi, you might want to put the court in New York, where any arbitration or dispute
Yep.
resolution happens. And if they push back on New York, you could agree in London or Singapore. But
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to get homeboyed, and you don't want to get homeboyed.
That's
Because
right.
if you do it in Saudi, they're
Yep.
going to be, you hate to say courts could be biased, but I think we've learned in the United States, I guess that can be the case now. Didn't used to be. 3 years ago, it wasn't. But nonetheless, you want to make sure that you have jurisdictional protection.
Yes.
That could be the choice of a law firm that will stay loyal, but they could be pressured socially or otherwise for defending you to the fullest extent of their law and as
Mm-hmm.
vigorously as possible. I mean, if you have to win a judgment outside of the jurisdiction where the actual transaction or transactions are taking place,
Mm-hmm.
you would love to get a judgment in Singapore and walk that judgment to a judge in Saudi, and you can almost guilt shame or shame guilt them into ruling in your favor because you've gone seemingly to a non-biased jurisdiction.
Right.
Or people need to know, if you're going to adjudicate in their jurisdiction, you're going to involve the U.S. Embassy and make it very messy and painful for all
Yes.
parties involved. And so, um, you know, you could have FDA approvals for your product, and they try to use a non-tariff barrier by making their regulatory process overly onerous for your product or service to come in which
Mm-hmm.
case you can again involve the market access and compliance or the U.S. trade rep in the United States to beat back that seemingly inadequate, unfair regulatory delay or opposition that they might be presenting to keep you out of their market. Now, those are obviously extreme cases, but legal and regulatory things should be best dealt with lawyers and compliance officers that
Yes.
understand the environment.
So that's definitely our stick as lawyers and CPAs, and structuring the contracts for our clients and protecting them. And we just want them to be able to go in, protect it, get their money out, protect it, and take all the steps that they need to in order to just focus on delivering the service, right? We take care of, most of the other parts. So last two questions, Eric, for smaller deals that might be 50,000, 100,000, 200,000. For you, $1 million deal is a waste of your time. 10 million.
Yeah, I would never say that any deal is a complete waste of our time. Some things I would say are more or less valuable for our time.
Right. So, but for businesses that might be doing deals under 1 million or 100,000, under 100,000, just getting started so that they can get their foot into the Middle Eastern market, what advice would you give them?
I mean, it's always about finding the local partners that would really be suitable. I mean, people fall in love with the Middle East because, oh, it's, all this, there's all this money and all these companies and all that lovely stuff. But I wouldn't be enamored by the big transactions and the big relationships. I would be focused on it's kind of like if you're dating, the first thing is you want to like who likes you, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to, date who wants to date you. You don't want to beg someone that doesn't really want to deal with you,
Mm-hmm.
because life is short, time is short. It's always the good and wise,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, to try to gauge who really wants to engage with you, who really wants to be in conversation or negotiation with you, and focus on them, irrespective of the potential transaction size. Because 10 good $1 million transactions is $10 million. 10 good $500,000 transactions, that's $5 million.
Mm-hmm.
And so you put yourself in a very enviable position if you're willing to kind of, do things at your same commensurate level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then the last question, you alluded to it earlier, where you talked about companies that were at the $2 million level growing into the $500 million level, and positioning our businesses for economic empowerment, being a Black international economic engine. So, what guidance would you give, just as a business community, if you sat down with 1,000 young people that are business interested, business savvy? They may have startup, they may be in AI, they may be tech people, and young people could go up to 50. So let me be clear about that, or 60. So but you looking at, and this is a two-part question. I mean, what would your vision be for that group of companies to move from that 2 million to 500,000 in the Middle Eastern market in this light? Vision 2030 and Vision 2040 in these different markets. What would your vision and image be for how those businesses can take that same roadmap to grow economically in the future? And then, and added to that, the last part is, if you had to do it again, if you had to start over and build your business in the Middle East again, what advice that you would give to this group to do differently than you did?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer the question backwards, and it's a caveat from the previous question that you asked. I wouldn't be as preoccupied with deal size or ticket size.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be as preoccupied with brand name in terms of, oh, I'm trying to partner with Nikhil, or I'm trying to partner with Dewa or Irina, or these big entities. Because I have a Black-owned client. They spent $1 million in a year and a half trying to get into Amazon, which they successfully did.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been woefully disappointed that they have made no sales. And I tried to explain to them, just because you get onto Amazon doesn't mean there's a demand for your product. And Amazon doesn't buy just because they're nice people. They buy because there's a demand for your product. So if 1 million people are saying, we want Dr. Muhammad's special bars of soap,
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can get them on Amazon, but if no one wants your bars of soap, no one wants your bars of soap. And so I say all that to say, if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't have only focused on $100 million, $1 billion, $50 million transactions. I would have been happy for one container a month, one small, $2,000 a month client that becomes a $4,000 a month client when we
Mm-hmm.
successfully perform service that becomes a $12,000 a month client.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was overly enamored with, the Middle East and all these big transactions, and I wasn't relational enough. I didn't look for the types of local partners. I ignored some outreach from some modest sized Middle Eastern firms because I thought, you're little. What do you know? Who are you? And now they're much larger and they don't return my phone calls. So the number one thing is humility. The
Mm-hmm.
number two thing is don't think more highly of yourself than you
Mm-hmm.
ought.
Mm-hmm.
The number three thing is no transaction that gets you in the door and making money in the market and justifying the expenditure of time and travel because you've got revenue to justify it. Don't say I'm doing business in the Middle East. You've gone 5 times, spent $5,000 on a ticket, $5,000 on hotel. So you spent $50,000 for $500 revenue. You have
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that you're guarding your revenue against your expenditure and not just saying, I know something will pop, in some period of time. I think that's sometimes an unwise approach. As it relates to young people, because they often have less baggage, they don't
Mm-hmm.
have wives or husbands, kids, big mortgages, major car payments, and even if they have major car payments or apartment rent, they have the ability to travel and stay 2, 3 weeks to try to build a relationship that will make something happen, that will get a contract signed, that will get a product sold, that get a service contracted for. I think that young people should be much more dynamic and much more aggressive than I was. The people that know me really well know actually I'm fairly cautious. Now, some people would say, "Well, how can you say you're cautious? You've flown to 88 markets." I only historically have flown to markets other people paid for me to go to.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a lot more focused on risk minimalization or mitigation than maybe I should have been. There were some time looking back, I should have taken more risks that I could recover from younger
Mm-hmm.
than some of the risks I didn't take, and I paid for not taking those risks. I'll give you an example. One of my good friends runs a $50 billion private equity fund focused on Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And she happens to say there's only one way she gets fired, and that's if she doesn't invest at least $2 to $3 billion in Africa per annum. Because her LPs and her GPs, the main investors in private equity
Right.
funds, they can put their money in a simple savings account in whatever country they're from and make money. They're investing in her and her private equity firm and her private equity funds to go
Mm-hmm.
make them aggressive returns. So if she doesn't invest money, so she would say, Eric, I don't try to eliminate risk. The risk is inherent in the countries in which I invest. I try to mitigate and manage risk.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that people often think risk or no risk. No, the issue is, do I look at Kuwait or Oman or Dubai, or what transaction in Kuwait, Oman, Dubai, or Jordan am I looking at? Jordan is very US friendly. They
Mm-hmm.
speak English. The government likes us. The commercial service is strong. The commercial service staff are loyal. So maybe that's a better market than Saudi. I'm not saying it is or isn't,
Mm-hmm.
but that a young person's evaluation has to be, almost like they would be evaluating a potential date or
Mm-hmm.
partner.
Mm-hmm.
I mean dating partner.
Mm-hmm.
Is this person going to return my call when we say we're going to go to dinner? Do I have to confirm 5 times, or do I confirm once and then they're at the restaurant when they say they be?
Yes.
Is there always going to be an excuse? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm running late. I am late. Because at the end of the day, if somebody's always running late to dinner with you,
Mm-hmm.
they're really not that busy. They just don't respect you that much.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Young people are actually good at that. They cut people off more quickly than people our age, we kind of come up with, well, the Beltway was bad this week,
Yeah.
and so I to answer your question, young people should get out there while they can. They should
Mm-hmm.
go try and fail. They should go learn what works for them, who works for them.
Mm-hmm.
They should jump on a trade mission. They should go on an exploratory visit, maybe that they design themselves, and get a step grant. There are a lot of ways
Right.
to fund it, but irrespective of that, they should set money aside to travel and see how the people over there work. They should use resources that they are really good at: Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. The point is, utilize those resources and take advantage of them and
Mm-hmm.
do something. Don't be stuck. Unfortunately, Black Americans of our age group, Dr. Muhammad, were often stuck in, well, what if? What this
Yes.
could? And
Yep.
young people aren't as preoccupied with that, nor should they be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if a transaction is $5,000, now you're moving. If it's
Mm-hmm.
$250, somebody's paid you to do something and go somewhere and provide something. That's significant progress. And it's funny because I remind people that we like to talk about GE and power plants and all that. GE still makes money one light bulb at a time.
This is true. This is true. This is
Motorola, one phone at a time.
yeah.
Apple's looking to sell the next phone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we think about the sexy, big, large numbers, but I was talking to a young brother the other day, and he made his first $1 million standing in line at 3 o'clock in the morning at Best Buy and having students at the University of Maryland stand in line with him, and he would pay them to go buy iPads, which he would turn around and sell in Africa and the Middle East because they couldn't get them as quickly as the U.S. release at Best Buy in Maryland in this case. And so he would buy 400 or 500 laptops. I think you could buy 3 or 4 each, and he'd have 20 or 30 friends stand in line. So when it opened at 8 or 9 or 10 a.m., whatever it was, he'd have 30 friends in line, and he'd give
Mm-hmm.
them all $100 to buy an iPad, and he'd turn them and ship them. That is very aggressive and ingenious of how to use youth and the ability to risk. So he'd have to figure out where he's going to get $10,000 or $15,000, but he turned that $15,000 into $50,000 in a matter
Mm-hmm.
of a week.
Wow. So that's an incredible story. And with young people, they are going to travel anyway. And we tell anybody, if you're going to a country where there is a U.S. embassy, just stop by. Just make an appointment, go by, see if you can have coffee. I mean, there are a lot more steps that are involved, but if you're going to go into a market, add a business aspect to it so that in the future, I'm going to use that, Eric. It could start out as a small contract, but it definitely can grow into something much, much bigger. So, with that, we're going to wrap up our interview. This has been an awesome conversation, an awesome example for us, Eric Henderson. Eric, any closing words you want to throw in?
Yeah, I would offer this. We as Black Americans do not have a choice not to get involved in international business. We don't. There's a choice. But the reality is, this country, whether it's Kamala Harris in the next 24 hours being the president, we will still have to hold her accountable to do things for Black
Mm-hmm.
people and Black business, and she could be a failure to do so, uh, despite her best intentions, like President Obama was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if President Trump wins, he may be equally disinclined to do much for us because he may feel like we didn't support him. And so the rest of the world is going to have to be a resource for us and to us, and we're going to have to be a resource for them by necessity. That's number one. Number two, we have to understand and appreciate people still want to do business with the United States and with Black Americans. We are the coolest people on the planet.
Yes.
Everybody wants to be like us. You see Korean schoolgirls learning how to dance like we dance and talk like
Mm-hmm.
we dance, and people all over the world understand our culture. We need to understand that culture is exportable. People want to do business with people they like and have fun with. And
Yes.
so, to the extent that we can be fun, likable, and professional, that is a uniquely exportable business approach. It doesn't mean you don't dot your I's and cross your T's. It doesn't mean that you're not thorough and timely and fulfill the statement of work. But it does mean you can be a heck of a lot of fun. And I find that people all over the world still enjoy that.
I agree. So thank you for those closing words, and thank you everybody for joining us for this fantastic example of why Black Americans and Black American businesses must grow from Black and local to Black and global. As I always love to say, I am your sister and servant, Melissa Muhammad. We are the Black and Global Business Network, globalizing our connections, keeping us in the Black, and we'll see you around the globe. Thank you, everybody. So that was a great conversation. And I keep using that word because when I'm telling you, when I am blessed to travel the world and to meet people all over the globe that are doing business, and I see a Black owned business that's successful, I'm like, oh, I need you to really talk to our community. I really need you to share what it is that you're doing and how you're able to position your business. And Eric is a fantastic example of that. And just so that you understand, that means he held the highest ranking positions in the Department of Commerce for Africa in the Middle East under 2 administrations. That's why I said he's an OG. That's under Clinton and under Bush. And now he is running his own business. And what Eric has agreed to do, and what Andres from this morning has agreed to do, is to help our businesses in the Middle East. And let me tell you, when we said that to Eric, first of all, we ended the interview and then he started texting us opportunities. He's like, okay, we're going to go here. We're going to go here. Okay, we're going to meet with this person. And we were like, we're in the middle of getting everybody set for the summit. So Eric is going to join us for our upcoming cohort. He's going to be a contributor to our upcoming cohort to help our businesses understand how to go into the Middle Eastern market. And then we're going to have Andres is going to be a part of our upcoming cohort as well as the different ministries of investments that we have met with earlier this morning. So now we're about to go into another critical section or session. Bing, are you able to hear me? I want to be really, really clear so that everyone can hear me.
Yes, loud and clear.
All right, awesome. So the next stage that we're going to go into is going to be your B2B matchmaking session. And all of you all should have completed your profile at this point. I hope your roundtables were great. I saw the education table, boy, you all were really talking. And let me tell you, in Saudi Arabia, there is Education City, where literally it is everything education that they are looking to import from around the world. Learning, training, development. I mean, they have universities and they centralized education tech. They centralized it in one location. So I saw that table and many other tables where you all were really collaborating. And so now we're going to go into the B2B matchmaking session where the system is automatically going to connect you. But I want to share my screen so that we can talk about exactly what we mean by the upcoming cohort, because these are the decisions that we need you all to make as you are meeting with your different potential partners on the US side. So our 2025 momentum cohort is focused on the Middle East. This is different than we've ever done any other cohort because we've never focused on one particular region. And it's also different because what we're looking for are sales, contract, and closing attitudes. We need people who are willing to do the work. And because we have already pre-identified these contracts, we want people who are going to deliver. We don't want to put our names out there. Eric is going to back us in our contract acquisition. He's going to back us in helping with the financing. And then we have Andres, who's going to put his support behind our businesses. This is in addition to the U.S. government and in addition to the Ministry of Investment in the different countries. So we have already identified 5 to 10 qualified buyers. These are the people that we'll put you in front of in 6 months. These contracts are pre-screened. You will secure a 5 to 7 figure contract opportunity within 12 months. So what we're going to do is, as you are going through the B2B, through the matchmaking session, everyone will have 10 to 15 minutes to talk about who they are and what they do. And listen, you don't know where the synergies may happen. You don't know how you might connect together. I met Eric at an embassy event for one country we went to, and he's talking about his businesses. Let me tell you, I'm sitting in that room. He told all these people at the embassies, he said, you see these 5 firms in here? All of us are expensive. I was like, oh yeah, I need to be what he's talking about. He said, this is how much you have to pay us in order for us to provide these services for you. He just included Black and Global, included me in the cohort and in the group of the 5 companies. And so from that, look at how I thought. And I don't want you to do this. I said, oh, I don't want to take any of his clients away from him, or, I don't want to, overstep on his clients. By the end of that meeting, he said, listen, I want you to help this person, this person, this person. I said, okay. I stepped outside of the embassy. The first person we met with, the second person, the third person we met with, we're headed to one farm that is farming, that is selling products all over the country. And they need our support with helping them to export. But listen, my mind was, I don't want to overstep him. He was like, no, that's not the mindset. Find someone to partner with, and then the 2 of us will go after the contract. So from that, we have developed this business. And let me tell you, he is providing his services to us. And when I tell you he's gotten funding in the billions of dollars, that's exactly what he does. And he's going to be the one that's going to be helping us with the support for funding. So the 5 to 7 figure contract opportunities, we're going to be in 5 markets for this next upcoming cohort, and we're going to have access to funding up to $250,000. Any larger projects, Eric is going to do that part. I'm on this part of the project for the $250,000. Now, let me say this. I don't want to put all this talent behind you and you're not willing to do the work. So let me be clear about who we are. So we're international attorneys and CPAs. We cross all the I's, we dot all the T's. We make sure that you're going to be in the skip the line, which is basically we're going to leverage. Andres has 30 years of business experience, and Eric has 30 years. We're going to leverage all of that and skip the line in all of these markets. The program is $10,000 for 12 months. And here are the next steps. You select your industry to review the contracts. We have already pre-screened the contracts. Now, let me be clear. When you go to your B2B matchmaking, please find a partner. I'm asking you to please do not go alone. It's enough money in these contracts for you all to be able to be successful. What we want is successful delivery, because like Eric said, once we deliver the first contract, we can keep growing from 2 million to 500 million, from 2,000 to 5,000 to 12,000 a month. So we can grow you over time. We just need, like Tanya said, their success depends on your success. We just need you to work with a US person to close a contract. Secondly, you're going to reserve your seat with a small investment. And that investment is $9.97 today, and you have flexible payments that are available. Third, we're going to perform company assessments to determine which contracts fit your company. We're going to do that from November 13th to November to December 6th. And there are two things that are going to happen. One, if you accept the contract opportunity, and then you pay your balance of $9,000, and we have flexible payments for that, and then you join our Skip the Line program. If you don't select the contract, then you will have access to the trade opportunity portal, and that lists contract opportunities that you're able to pursue on your own. Now, it's going to take you a lot longer. It's a lot more work. It's a lot more regulatory process. It's a lot more headache, but it's still contract opportunities that you will be able to avail. And then you can join us 3 times next year, because Eric and Andres and all of these groups are going to bring their different businesses from the Middle East to come and do business with us next year. So you'll find the link in the chat. You can ask the Black and Global team if you have any questions, and we are really excited for this opportunity for you. So with that, Bing, we're going to, it is now 2:07, and we're going to move into the smart matchmaking session. After that, you're going to come back and we're going to have one last conversation, and we'll wrap it up for the day. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.